Welcome back to the Big Bits Bible Show. I'm your host this morning, Rob. Well, what does a can of beef stew and choices have in common with our story today? Well, that's what we're going to learn and find out because, we all make choices every single day, don't we, boys and girls? I make choices, you make choices. Sometimes those choices are not good and they result in bad things. So we're going to talk about a story from the Bible once again that teach us some very important truths and lessons. So we're glad that you're here with our show. I want to give you a quick review of where we've been at, boys and girls. As we've been talking about, a few weeks ago, we looked at the story of Noah and how God, of course, made a special promise through Noah and his family as God saved them, and they repopulated the whole earth after the flood. And then, of course, we looked at 2 weeks ago where God called an old man, Abram, and his wife Sarai. He was 75, she was 65, and God called them to go to a land he would give them, and they didn't know, though, where they were going. And God promised he would make him a great nation, bless all people of the earth through the family of Abraham. And then last week, we fast-forwarded 25 years, you remember, and Abraham and Sarah now have had the promised child, Isaac, who's been born. And when he reached a certain age, God did the unthinkable and asked Abraham to take him and offer him as a sacrifice, a burnt offering on Mount Moriah. And we looked at how Abraham trusted God, believed in God, and he obeyed God, even believing God could raise Isaac from the dead. And so we saw how God spared Abraham. He did not allow him to make that sacrifice. And he knew that Abraham trusted and fully believed in God. Well, now our story picks up, of course. And Isaac now is a man. And he is now going to find a wife. And that's exactly what he does. He goes out and will find Rebekah. Because the promised child of Abraham and God's blessings will go through the family of Abraham. And so Isaac and Rebekah marry, and she becomes pregnant with twins. I don't know if you know of anyone, boys and girls, or maybe in your family that have had twins. How exciting, how big that would be. And so she has two twins, and we find out that these two brothers are actually fighting in the womb. They're in her tummy. They're already fighting and jostling with each other. And so Rebekah will have these two twin boys. And so the first one is going to be Esau. He's the first one. And God actually said that in her womb, these two brothers, these two sons, were going to be two great nations. And actually, he says the older one is going to serve the younger brother. And we're going to find out how that plays out here in our story as we begin here. But these two sons, these two brothers are born, and the first one is Esau. Look at him, how cute he is. And his name means he's red or hairy. And so look at his red hair, and he's hairy. And the second child that was born was right on his heels, Jacob. And that's what Jacob's name means, heel, or deceiver, that we'll also learn. And so you have these two brothers that were already warring when they were coming and were born, Esau and Jacob. And so actually, that's where our real story is going to pick up here, and we're going to continue in our story. And actually, we've got a great big surprise for you. We have these two famous fighting brothers in studio with us to talk more about this story. Let's give it up for Esau and Jacob. Come on out. Jacob and Esau, come on out here. Yeah, welcome.
Oh, you get the first chair because you have the birthright, huh?
Yeah. All right, they're already starting. Let's not get into that just yet. Well, welcome to the Big Bible Bit Show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad you guys could, put aside your differences and could join us. So you feeling good about being here, Jacob?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah. Esau, you kind of look a little tense.
A little tense.
A little chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, as always.
Okay, it's rough, isn't it? I know. We're going to talk about why.
You get robbed out of your life.
It's not easy. Yeah, so basically we talked about, you guys were cute babies, by the way. And one of you didn't stay so cute, but we'll get to that here in just a minute, a little bit.
That's really all I have going for me.
Right.
My cute baby.
Yeah, after that it all went downhill. But so you guys become, you start growing up, and we don't hear a lot about you in the Bible. By the way, the story is found in Genesis 25 and Genesis 27 in the Old Testament, where we learn about you guys. And we don't hear much about your childhood and your younger years, but when you guys reach a certain age as young men, that's when the story gets real interesting, boys and girls. And so, Esau, tell me about you. You, what did you like to do? What was kind of your thing in life?
I like to hunt. I just like to go in the woods and spend time with God's nature, and I like to hunt. And people respect a man that can hunt. They're strong.
They do.
Respected. Man, my daddy loves the food I could cook
Really?
up.
Isaac?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Man, I could cook up some mean meat.
I bet when you brought home that wild game, his eyes just lit up.
That's right.
Yeah. Matter of fact, actually, the Bible actually says that your dad actually played favorites with you.
Oh, yeah.
That he really loved you more than Jacob.
I mean, who wouldn't love me?
Yeah, who wouldn't love that face, that nice, hairy face?
You say that, it's easy. Yeah. Little mama's boy.
Well, and there you are, cooking some stew, wild game for your dad there. I bet he loved that.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Now, actually, Jacob, let's talk about you though. Yeah. You weren't hairy and red hair, all that.
Yeah, manly.
Yeah, manly. You were, your skin was smooth, and you were more quiet, and you actually kind of like to stay inside. Esau liked to go outside. What was that like?
It was more peaceful because I could make things and just be at peace.
Yeah. And you like to, you and your mom were real close, Rebecca,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were pretty tight.
Yeah.
Actually, she kind of did the same thing that Dad Isaac did. She actually favored you, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't work out so well when parents usually play favorites. But let's see how this continues. So, one day, Esau, you're out in the woods, out in the land, and you're hunting, right?
Yeah, doing what manly men do.
Right. But on this particular hunt, obviously you didn't catch anything because you come back into the camp.
Yeah.
And you're starving. Tell me about that.
I mean, some days aren't as good in the woods as others, I mean, some days you might run up on a big old beast of an animal.
Right.
You've done good, but I mean, this was one of those days that it wasn't as good, right?
It wasn't as good. So you come back home.
And I was
camp.
exhausted. Being a man, and a manly man at that, is an exhausting job. And here I come home and I'm starving. I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd exhausted all my energy trying to provide.
So what do you see your brother doing here?
I see my brother doing what he normally does, just staying at home doing nothing, and he's a little cooking.
Jacob, you're a pretty good cook, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty good shape.
Yeah, I'm guessing Rebecca
I
showed
mean,
you.
it's not as good as my meat.
Right. I'm guessing Rebecca showed you a few pointers,
Yeah.
Because you guys spend a lot of time, you and your mom, at the tent and inside and cooking and learning all that. And so she's probably showed you a lot of good ways to cook this meat.
Definitely.
So you're sitting here making, let me get this straight, you're making this pot of stew.
Yeah.
And
Nice
so,
and red.
Right,
nice red.
Nice red stew.
That's right. Yeah, so Jacob, you're making this, and Esau, you come in and you can smell it away.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you smell that thing from a mile away.
And it smelled so good, I thought my mama was cooking it, but turns out it was actually Jesus.
Yeah,
but whatever.
Little brothers.
When you're that
Cook I
hungry,
am.
you're desperate.
So you're desperate. You come in and you say, "I'm dying." Right?
I'm dying.
I mean, well, you
That's
really
not my
weren't
fault.
dying.
Hey, were you there?
Well, I wasn't there, but
Exactly.
I mean, was he really dying? But anyway, so you say you're dying,
Which I was.
and you say what to your brother?
I just say, hey, how about a bowl of that soup?
Give me your birthright.
Now,
Yeah.
wait a minute. You go right there, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just
Hey,
like,
he's a little punk.
no hold barred. You say what? Sell me your what?
Sell me your birthright.
Now, the birthright basically meant that the oldest had ownership over all of the family, the father's land and possessions, and that basically you would get double the inheritance.
Yeah.
And so you
So-
really think that was a good exchange?
Yeah, it's like the birthright. When my daddy dies, I get basically all his stuff.
Right.
So let's say he had all these nice toys. Well, when he died, I got all his toys.
Right.
So whatever he had, I got. And so, but I'm dying here. What good is it if I die?
Right. You can't enjoy that if you
can't.
die.
If I die, what the
Right.
what's the
All these blessings, all this material possessions, and you're dying.
So you gotta know where I'm at mentally. You
Yeah,
can't just judge
it's
me
good
like
to
that.
know. So, Jacob, you seize this opportunity because,
yeah, definitely.
this is kind of who you are a little bit.
A swindler, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
and so you sell him, you say, hey, sell me your birthright, and you don't even hesitate. You make the deal. right?
I guess.
And so you enjoy that nice stew there, and there you are again, a little bit hairy there. And,
I'm a hairy man.
yeah, hairy man's man. And there, boy, that birthright, all those blessings, all those material.
Forget.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he made his choice, boys and girls. You know, that birthright with all that blessing, or that pot of stew. So he made his choice. And so later on, you know, we have another story that just follows that in Genesis, beginning in Genesis 27. You have this deception, and this one is real. Wow.
Mind
Jacob,
you, before you move on, the stew wasn't even that good anyway.
Yeah, okay.
That's good. I just wanted to put that out there.
So you made
it's
that
not
exchange.
as good as my meat.
You made that exchange, that choice, and it didn't even, you know, wasn't even that good tasting. Okay, so we move forward a little bit, and so Jacob's kind of, you know, tricked you a little bit out of that birthright a little bit, kind of took advantage of you, and now this is just, I mean, this is bad. How do you explain this? So Isaac is, you know, boys and girls, Isaac's getting older, and he can't hardly see, the Bible says. He knows that he's about to eventually die, and so he wants to pronounce, very important in that time, in that world, a blessing. And this was connected with the Abraham's promise that God would bless Abraham's line through his children, and that would typically be that firstborn, which would be in this case, you know,
obviously,
you know, because a lot of, you know, if you notice how a lot of people always refer to Jacob and Esau.
Yeah, I know. When you,
Does that bother you?
I was actually thankful when you announced it. You said Esau and Jacob. And
Yeah,
then
but
you even backtracked and went back to Jacob.
It's so
and
easy
Esau.
to say Jacob and Esau, but that bothers you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
top dog.
Doesn't bother you though, right? Obviously.
No,
yeah,
of course
yeah,
it don't.
So this blessing, this blessing that God, the covenant blessing that was so critical, and in that part of the world, boys and girls, it meant everything. And so your dad, Isaac, tells you one day, hey, you know, I may not have much time left. I need to pronounce my blessing upon you. Why don't you go? What's he tell you to go make
He
some
tells
what?
me to go out and hunt and bring some of that meat that he likes.
Yeah, he
I'm
likes
like,
that
and I
tasty
said,
meat.
that one? He goes, oh, that's the one. And so like, I already knew. And so I grab my quiver and my bow, and
So
I
you
go
take
out
off.
like a manly man to hunt. And
He tells you to go off and get some of that.
Yeah,
Now,
that's right.
Jacob, this is where you and
I
your
was a real Robin Hood.
this is where you and your mom
yeah.
come into play. Yeah, actually, your mom, Rebecca, and this is just hard to imagine, you know, but favoritism with parents, this is kind of what it leads to. Your mom overhears this conversation that God wants to bless Esau with this blessing, and so she devises a plan. She's actually the mastermind, right?
Oh, yes.
And so, what does she tell you
Yeah,
here?
go ahead, show him. Show him.
Yeah.
What'd she
so
come up with?
She said, put some goat skin on your arms and just be hairy like your brother, pretty much.
Yeah, didn't she even say put on some of his clothes? Because
Yeah.
let's be honest, Esau, you're out there on the hunt all the time with
Some
animals,
raggedy clothes.
kind of
I don't,
smelly
yeah,
too.
I don't smell like
You
a
probably
pretty,
don't always-
I don't smell like a pretty boy.
That's
You're
right. You're right.
You're
So
right.
she says, hey, you need to wear some of his clothes, and you go in there and you bring. Actually, she goes and gets a couple of goats. She kills them, makes that favorite meal of his, and brings that in there for you to bring that in there. And you remember his reaction? I mean, was he a little bit hesitant at first?
He said, how did you get it so fast?
Yeah.
And I said, because the Lord your God blessed me.
Oh man, look at you! You're really working your dad. That's bad.
Yeah.
So he then he says something about your voice. What did he say about the voice?
He said it was my voice, Jacob's voice, but it was Esau's garments and hands.
Yeah.
And it was,
So he's trying to put it together that, you know, you sound like Jacob, but you feel like Esau,
Mhm.
right? And so what's dad supposed to do here? He can't see well, and so that's just his son Esau, he thinks. So he pronounces this blessing on you. Did you knowingly, willingly deceived your father? At the time, now, you didn't feel bad about that, did
no,
you?
not at all.
Yeah, what can you say about that, boys and girls? Esau, man, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's nothing you could say, right?
Yeah. Looks like chicken, smells like chicken, but
Yeah.
it ain't chicken.
So what happens then, so you come into camp,
Yeah, I come
And
in.
you
I did
fall
exactly
down.
as my daddy asked.
yeah.
I
And
go out, I hunt, I bring in this meat, I cook it up real good like I always do. I was like, hey, Pops, it's time for you to give me your
And what did he
birthright.
say?
He said, my son, what do you mean? I've already given you my birthright.
Oh man, what'd you think? Who'd you know? Did you know immediately who did it?
You better believe it.
Yeah.
Worst part is, I didn't think my mom would turn on me like that, but now that I think about it, it's whatever.
Yeah, that's rough. So you basically just start crying out, right? I mean, you're in
Yeah.
misery.
Everything. Everything was
you've
swept out from
You've
underneath
lost the
me.
birthright, the inheritance. the covenant promise and God's blessing through your family,
That's right.
it's all over.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, Esau or Jacob, that is kind of rough. That's rough. And so I'm guessing you were a little bit upset.
Yeah, I was
towards your brother.
I was pretty furious. I wanted to kill him, man.
So Jacob, did you know this? That
Yeah, and I was not going to face that. I left.
Yeah, Mom kind of got you on an animal and packed you up. Bailed town. Got out of Dodge.
It's like he came up, sucker punched me, and then ran away.
Yeah. Wow. This is a pretty dysfunctional family, I think, is what we're getting at here.
Well, I'm pretty functional.
Yeah,
I mean, if you saw me in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, if you call selling your birthright for a stew. But yeah, you guys are, anyway, so, I want to, boys and girls, as we kind of close, the Bible says to get rid of all evil and lying and hypocrisy. Don't be jealous or speak evil of others. Put all these things out of your life. And, this wasn't good. Jacob and Esau here. And more importantly, boys and girls, we talked about choices. So when we think about choices, we all make choices. Some of those choices are good. Some of those choices are not good. And there's consequences as a result. And what we need to do is trust in God, because, the Bible actually says, let me read you a verse here. Listen to what God says in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 12. There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. So there are choices we make, boys and girls, that can either bless us and be good, or choices that are bad, and we have consequences that can ultimately lead to our separation from God. Now here's the good news. This is where the gospel, so I got good news for both of you guys, because God can use our bad choices to continue to do His purpose and His will. And so even though this was not God did not approve, Jacob, of this deception. Obviously. And God did not approve of you selling your birthright for a pot of stew. But God was able to use this. Even though we make bad choices, God can still bless us. Isn't that pretty good to hear? And ultimately, God's plan to bless us did come through the family of Abraham, and through that line of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and we'll continue next week with another story that ultimately leads to Jesus Christ, who came to die for all of our bad choices. And He died on the cross for us so that we could be a child of God. So, boys and girls, we're glad you guys were here today, and we're so glad that Esau and Jacob could be here with us today. So why don't you say goodbye to the boys and girls, and we'll see you next time on the Big Bible Bit Show. All right.